morning to all our CCoP members from across Canada. I'm Lauren Rendle, and I'm speaking to you from beautiful Vernon, BC, where I spend my winters enjoying the snow. I'm pleased to introduce my co-host for today's meeting, CCoP Vice President Len Polsky. Len, thanks for being here, and maybe you can tell our listeners where here is for you.
Thanks, Lauren. I'm calling in today from sometimes sunny, but always warm Calgary. Hello, everybody who's joining us today.
I'd like to start with an acknowledgement of the many places from which we gather today. As pilgrims, we know that the paths we walk take us in the footsteps of many generations of pilgrims who went before us. In the same spirit, we acknowledge that wherever we are in this country, we gather in places where generations of Indigenous people have sought and continue to seek to walk gently on the land. We aspire to a new relationship with all our relations in all generations, one based in mutual hospitality and respect. And with that, welcome to the CCoP Annual General Meeting for the year ending December 31, 2022.
This is our third year using this platform. To make the experience as painless as possible, we're going to start by walking you through some of the things you're going to see on your screen today. First, the only people whose faces you'll see are our speakers or panelists. Everybody else's microphones and cameras are off, but you'll be able to ask questions and, of course, to vote. More about that in just a minute. If you hover your mouse along the bottom of the Zoom window on your screen, you should see some icons. One of those is something called Q&A. This is the place where you can ask questions or make comments. Just click on Q&A and a window will pop up where you can type your question. Notice that there's a scroll bar on the right-hand side of the Q&A window. Lauren.
We have an enthusiastic team of volunteers who are monitoring the Q&A screen. There are a lot of people on this call, so we'll ask you to keep your questions and comments relevant to the motion or topic that is on the floor. We also apologize in advance if we can't get to all the questions within the time constraints of the meeting. If we don't get to your question, we will contact you after the meeting with an answer. If your question has to do with how to use the meeting technology, you can contact our IT support at the email address that's up on the screen, and our video conferencing guru, Tanya, will help you out.
As you saw in the meeting agenda, we do have some motions to be put before you at this meeting. When we get to the motions, a window will pop up automatically on your screen, and you'll have about 20 seconds to cast a vote on each motion. Your votes are all anonymous. What we're going to do now is to put up a little test poll so you can try it out. We're going to ask Tim Borum, our Chief Returning Officer, to launch the poll. When it appears on your screen, you'll see that there are, in fact, 2 questions. There we go. Please respond to both of them. And for this one, we'll give you a little extra time because it's our trial run. When you're done, click on Submit. Remember, there's a scroll bar to the right of the questions, so you may need to scroll down to answer the second question and to find the Submit button. So let's just wait a few seconds.
Madam Chair, the poll is now closed. For the first question, which communes have you traveled all or part of? 79% said Camino Francés and 41% said Camino Portugués, with the remainder among the other choices. What is your favorite Camino? Question 2, 37% said Camino Francés and 19% said Camino Portuguese.
Thank you, Tim. Len, maybe this would be a good time to explain to our members how we handle abstentions.
Sure. If on any motion you check the box that says abstain, then your vote will not count in determining whether or not that motion passes. Only the votes cast in favor or in opposition are counted when we determine if there's a majority or not.
I think that takes us through most of the housekeeping items relating to how to use the video conferencing features. Just a few more points about the program for today. We planned the business portion of this AGM to run for less than an hour. Following that, we'll have a brief 5-minute bio break. Then we'll be joined by our special guest, Lori Dennett, who joins us from Spain today and will treat us to some reflections on the theme of Camino, then and now, followed by a chance for you to ask questions of our guest. It's going to be a wonderful discussion, and I hope you will all stay for it.
We're recording this meeting for members who are unable to attend, and we'll make Lori Dennett's presentation available to you on our YouTube channel after today's events.
With that, let's get started. The first order of business is to decide if we have quorum, and we do. I see that we have 90 members on our call, or 91 now, so we are in good shape to have quorum. So I will call the meeting to order. Members, you will soon have a slide of the agenda before you. The motion to adopt the agenda is moved by Chuck Hunt of Edmonton and seconded by Betty Brown of Kelowna. Before I call the question, we need to know whether any of our members have anything to add to the agenda or any requests for reordering.
If you do, then you should type a question mark into the Q&A box and hit send. That will tell us that we need to give you some time to type out your full question before we continue on. Just type question mark, hit send, and then type your actual question and hit send again. We'll pause for about 20 seconds in case there are any requests for changes to the agenda.
Wendy, are there any questions?
No questions have been received.
Thank you, Wendy. The motion is to adopt the agenda as circulated. You will have 20 seconds to vote. Tim, will you please launch the poll?
Madam Chair, the poll is now closed. We have 79 votes, 100% approve the motion.
Thank you, Tim. I declare the motion carried.
We'll now move on to the motion to adopt the minutes of last year's meeting, which is moved by Lauren Rendle of Calgary and seconded by Wendy Lowley of Victoria. Before I call the question, are there any errors or omissions in the minutes? If so, please let us know you have a question by submitting a question mark, then type your correction for the minutes into the Q&A and then hit submit. We'll wait a few seconds for you.
Wendy, are there any questions?
No questions have been received.
Thank you, Wendy. The motion to adopt the minutes of the meeting of February 12th, 2022 as circulated. You will have 20 seconds to vote.
Madam Chair, the poll is now closed. Of 78 people voting, 69 approved and 0 opposed. There were 9 abstentions.
Thank you, Tim. I declare the motion carried. There's a full written president's report in the CCoP website, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but we'll talk about a few of the highlights. After 2 challenging years dominated by negotiating the impact of COVID, the CCoP board watched expectantly as the Camino began reopening. We had cut back expenses when the revenue decreased due to travel and health restrictions, but we had prioritized well, supporting and maintaining our chapters and services. So as our membership returned, we were ready. The Treasurer's report will give more details as to how we grew and began again to thrive in 2022. The board had a number of priorities in 22, in addition to its financial stewardship. One was to complete our strategic planning project. Together with chapter coordinators, we met in small groups to develop our strategic objectives, creating a clear, flexible roadmap forward, while staying true to our mission to share our love of the Camino, inspiring and enabling others on their way. A continuing board priority is to nurture a strong leadership team. In April this year, we will have an in-person board chapter coordinator retreat in London, Ontario, a first since 2018. Taking a step towards being more inclusive, the board did approve our sponsorship of a supported Portuguese Camino trip. This offer was so popular, 2 trips went out in the fall of 22. Feedback from the participants expressed gratitude, as without the support, many would not have been able to realize their Camino dream. Another board priority is our international outreach, which Len will talk about. Len.
Even though we're an organization that exists to serve English-speaking Canadians, we have partnerships with many different organizations in Spain and with other Camino-related organizations around the world. This reflects one of the strategic objectives that we've identified for the CCoP, which is to engage with the greater Camino community. An example of how we're executing on this objective is our international outreach. As one example, in June of this past year, Lee Pennock was invited to participate in an online discussion hosted by the Mozarabe Camino Association in Spain. The event took place in 3 languages and looked at the benefits of walking this less traveled route, which Lee had in fact just walked last spring. Some of the albergues along that route have also benefited from our Keep the Camino Alive fundraiser campaign. There was a lot of interest expressed in the CCoP, so Lee was able to be our ambassador. The International Committee is also planning a joint gathering with the American Pilgrims on the Camino Association. The American Association meets annually, and several years ago, they held their meeting in Toronto. There is once again interest on both sides of the border to hold a joint meeting in Canada, both to learn from what our American counterparts have done to benefit the Camino and their members, and to share the CCoP's own impressive accomplishments. So a working group has been created and is hard at work now, nailing down the many details that go into planning an exciting event like that. Participation targets, speakers, how to make the event self-funding if possible, virtual participation options, activities, and so on. They've targeted 2025, and after canvassing a number of possibilities, Vancouver has been chosen as the location. There is also an openness to have the Quebec Association participate, and the possibility of other languages and international participants beyond Canada and the States. These are just a couple of examples of how we're working to engage with the greater Camino community. So stay tuned for more details. And now we're going to invite Tom Friesen to present his report as the chapter coordinator liaison. Tom.
Thank you, Len. This year, our 18 chapters have continued to be impacted by COVID considerations. There has been some return to face-to-face meetings for some chapters with Camino walks, spring or fall meetings, St. James Day events, Camino 101 sessions for prospective pilgrims, Camino coffee meetings, special presentations, book releases, and sing-alongs. I was particularly gratified by the coordination of several Ontario chapter events when Dan Mullins visited to come and sing with us. Some chapters are using Zoom to continue to reach out to their members to provide information, have coffee meetings, present topics of interest. Zoom recordings have been made for the use of chapter coordinators. The Victoria chapter has a number of high-quality YouTube videos available on their website. Some chapters are using Facebooks. Other chapters use newsletters, while others use email to communicate with their members. Many post notices on the events page of CCoP. A number of our chapters have provided support to specific albergues. This normally occurs when a critical member or more of the chapter has served as hospitalera in that location. They have an accurate idea of the needs and who would be responsible for using money to meet those needs. There has also been support given to Pilgrim House in Santiago. There are other projects that are unique to specific chapters. Halifax is assisting in developing a Nova Scotia Camino. London puts considerable energy and volunteer hours into providing community meals and a compassionate presence to support disadvantaged people in that city. We have had some chapter coordinators pass the torch to new leadership. I want to thank all the chapter coordinators for their hard work and inspiration in the preparation and support, both in the setting off and in the return of our Canadian pilgrims on the Camino de Santiago. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. The motion to receive the reports of the president and the chapter liaison is moved by Donna Coots of Vancouver and seconded by Kathy Hendrickson Gracie of Kitchener-Waterloo. Before I call the question, are there any questions about these reports? Just type in your question mark and you know how the rest goes. Thank you. Wendy, are there any questions?
No questions have been received, Lauren.
There, thank you. Tim, please launch the poll. The motion is to receive the reports of the president and chapter liaison as circulated. You'll have 20 seconds to vote.
Madam Chair, the poll has now closed. We have, and for the reports of the president and chapter liaison, we have 98% approved, that's 81 votes, and 2 abstentions.
Thank you. I declare the motion carried.
We're now going to invite Barbara Smith, our treasurer, to present the financial reports and next year's budget. Barbara.
Thank you, Lynn. What am I going to be presenting today is the condensed version of our financial statements for the year ending December 31st, 2022. A more detailed version of these statements is provided on our members section of our website. The financial statements and budget have been presented, reviewed, and approved by the board of directors at our meeting on January 26, 2023. Just so you understand the workings of how finances are managed, it is the board's responsibility to review and approve the budget, the financial statements, and any other financial arrangements. In addition to the required reports that are approved by the board, the Finance Committee presents forecasts and other reports during the year to provide more insight on how finances contribute to our strategic plan. In addition, we have a subcommittee of the Finance Committee called the Investment Committee that focuses and manages the funds held in our Lifetime Investment Fund. In the next few slides, I would like you to please note that the donation program is reported on separately and is not included in our annual budget. A summary of the Keep the Camino Alive campaign, is provided later in this report. We are treating this as a standalone program with the intention of distributing all funds collected to businesses supporting the Camino. First slide summarizes the revenue for 2021 compared to our budget and actual for 2022. I would like you to note that our total memberships at the end of 2019 were at 2,845, and they decreased to 2,145 during COVID. At the end of 2022, we are back to 2019 levels, ending the year off at 2,805 members. It's great to see that the pilgrim activity is picking up again. On the revenue slide, you will notice that our annual membership sales exceeded our budget by 5,640 and lifetime membership sales by 1,200. Our budget was fairly conservative as we anticipated very little travel in the first quarter and expected demand to grow as the year progressed. Sales really picked up in the last 2 quarters, ending the year off in a very positive note, exceeding 2021 by 50%. Our budget for credentials and badges was also conservative, but we more than doubled our budget. The last half of the year really showed the story of the built-up demand for pilgrims wanting to get back onto the Camino. Investment income shows on the statements is mainly derived from dividends earned on the lifetime investment fund held with BMO that yielded approximately 7% over the year. Overall, we are very pleased with the revenue for 2022, exceeding our budget by 11,723. The expense summary outlines the main categories of our expenses incurred during the year. I would just like to note that our organization, we really try to keep our costs down, and many of the functions are performed such as IT, finances, legal, and many administrative functions are done by volunteers at no cost. We are very fortunate these individuals step up and donate their time and their skills. Product expenses refer to the costs for postage, credentials, badges, and office supplies. As you can imagine, being that our sales are up, so are these costs. General administrative costs were down as we had budgeted some funds for travel, and we did not spend any of this in this category, and our expenses for last year's AGM were minimal. In addition, last year's budget included $3,000 for a review engagement, which was waived by our membership at the AGM. This cost saving allowed us to direct these funds towards supporting the Camino. National database costs were fairly close to budget. These are costs for maintaining our membership database and MailChimp used by our chapters. These expenses are standard monthly expenses that do not vary much throughout the year. The chapter support and gathering includes funds set aside for a national meeting for our board and chapter coordinators, and an additional $3,400 from the funds we received from Trip Merchant from the assisted walk in Portugal were allocated to this expense category, making up much of the variance. Contributions to the Camino refers to an annual donation we make to 2 albergues in Spain. Other contributions are done through the donation program. The financial summary puts together the revenue expenses and adds in the unrealized capital gains or losses and interfund transfers for the year. This year, the board approved $10,415 from operations to go to the donation program. $2,915 of this was from matching funds during the month of December for our full year badge promotion, and the remainder from our operations surplus. It is wonderful to be able to provide these funds in support of the Camino. Overall, we show a deficit of $1,028, and it's broken down into 3 categories. $2,085 is from operations, which is used to pay for our monthly expenses going forward. $7,566 is surplus from the lifetime fund, which is allocated over a 25-year period or 4% per annum to operations. And the third category is unrealized capital loss, which is an adjustment for investments to the current market value at year end. Until these investments are sold, these gains are not realized. This is just a paper entry. We continue to hold these investments, which are recovering after a difficult year in the markets. As mentioned earlier, the Keep the Camino Alive donation program is accounted for separately from operations. To date, we have collected over $54,000. $37,242 was from member donations and $17,915 came from board-approved surplus allocations. We have sent $37,636 over to businesses that support the Camino in the last 2 years, and have 14,555 that will flow over to the new donation program called the Camino Spirit Fund and will be distributed in 2023. We are very grateful for the generous donations from our members. This is outstanding and has really helped these businesses stay afloat over the past few years. That leads us to the statement of financial position, which shows us a snapshot of the assets and liabilities at December 31st for each of the respective years. Part of the decrease in the checking account is due to $30,000 that we have moved to GICs, earning an average of 3.12%. As time progresses, we will move forward on our strategic plan and other initiatives, and these funds will be available. This still leaves $30,299 in our checking to pay for our operational expenses. The $10,546 accumulated in the savings account is the buildup of lifetime memberships sold in the past year. This balance is cleared out at year end and with a portion used to fund operations, and the remaining will go to the Lifetime Investment Fund. The BMO Investment Fund has a slight decrease due to the adjustment to the current market value, explained earlier as unrealized. New funds will be added from lifetime membership sales over the past year and invested in large cap diversified exchange traded funds, referred to as ETFs, paying monthly dividends. It is intended that will preserve our capital and it'll give us a reasonable, steady return. Our lifetime membership fund is a key part of our financial plan designed to last a pilgrim's lifetime of approximately 25 years. These funds are managed by our investment committee in consultation with a financial advisor from BMO. Accruals and liabilities of $17,165 pertains to funds accrued for a future board and chapter gathering and a small amount for outstanding expenses. You will notice a line referred to as the accumulated unrealized gain losses from BMO Investment Fund, which shows you the accumulated current market value adjustments to date on our investment fund. Therefore, to explain that, the $2,655 is the accumulated unrealized capital gain up to December 31st, 2022. The 2023 budget is compared to 2022 actuals in this report. We are anticipating a slight increase in sales overall, with most of the increase in credentials and badges. You will notice other income has been decreased from $3,461 to $150, as the 2022 figures include funds that we received from Trip Merchant for the Portugal assisted walk. Investment income shows an increase due to interest earned on our GSCs. As for the budget expenses, product expenses will be close to 2022. Our general administrative are increased, including $4,500 we've allocated for travel costs for some of our CCoP representatives to attend the American Pilgrim Association Conference in April 2023, and $3,000 for professional accounting fees for a review engagement. The $3,000 for the review engagement will be required if our membership does not waive the appointment of a public accountant. This will be presented shortly. Our members vote on the option, and if not unanimous, we will incur this expense. This is a significant expense and accounts for approximately 10% of our overall expense budget. If the waiver is approved, these funds will be available to other Camino-related initiatives. The national database expenses reflect a slight increase for our membership database and MailChimp, as well as some funds for rebranding expected over the next year. Contributions, gathering, and chapter support provides funds for another board and chapter gathering in the future and support for our chapters. Overall, we are planning a surplus of $9,385 for 2023, with $2,700 being allocated to the donation program. The Lifetime Fund will show a surplus from the lifetime membership sales. Overall, this is a healthy budget for 2023. That concludes the financial report.
Thank you, Barb. The motion to receive the report of the treasurer is moved by Barbara Smith of Saskatoon and seconded by Neville Tenser of Victoria. Before I call the question, are there any questions for Barb? If you have questions, you know what to do now. Thank you.
Yes, we do have one question. What are the CMV and FMV on the financial summary?
Yeah, so the CMV is and FMV are basically the same thing. The current market value adjustment, it just reflects the value at that date of December 31st, 2022, whatever the market value was.
I have a question mark, so I'll just wait for the question to come in. Who is managing the investment fund?
The investment committee manages the lifetime investment fund, made up of Neville and Jim, in consultation with the BMO financial advisor.
The questioner thanks you. Another question. The GIC yield will go lower. Are we planning to move the GIC fund next year or when?
The GICs are in a one-year term, which was bought last summer. And that will all be reviewed by the finance committee when they come due. So, and depending on the initiatives that CCoP is planning, it'll be whether we need those funds for those initiatives or not.
I don't see any further questions coming in. No more question marks.
Well, thank you, Barb and Wendy. The motion is to receive the report of the treasurer as presented. Tim, would you launch that poll? You have 20 seconds to vote.
Madam Chair, the poll has now closed. For the motion to receive the report of the treasurer, there were 84 votes to approve and no votes in opposition.
Thank you, Tim. I declare the motion carried. Len.
The next motion is one that we are required to put to our members every year under the Canada Not-for-Profit Corporations Act. And Barb touched on this just a few moments ago near the end of her remarks. If the members are confident of the integrity of the financial statements, the Act allows them to waive the appointment of a public accountant. This waiver has to be done, has to be approved unanimously by those who choose to vote, which means that there cannot be any votes against the motion or it fails. Our financial statements are prepared in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, and they're reviewed by the Finance Committee, comprising of our former Vice President, the Treasurer, and another board member. The committee includes a retired CPA, a retired CMA, and a retired CMC, Certified Management Consultant. Our financial statements and supporting documentation are reviewed every month by the officers. The financial statements are presented and approved by the board quarterly, including the year-end financials. Because the engagement of a public accountant would represent a significant expense for our organization relative to its annual budget, as Barb indicated, something in the order of 10%, the board unanimously recommended that we seek agreement from you, our members, to waive appointing a public accountant. We want to be very sure to explain carefully what it is we're asking you to vote on and what the implications are here. Without the motion, the Act requires us to appoint a public accountant. If all of you vote to support the motion, then we will not hire an external public accountant. If even one person opposes the motion, that means we will appoint one and incur the cost. As Barb explained, the proposed budget includes an amount already set aside to retain the public accountant. If the requirement is waived, that amount will be available for other initiatives.
Motion is to waive the appointment of a public accountant is moved by Barbara Smith of Saskatoon and seconded by Kevin McKinney of Fredericton. Before I call the question, Do you have any questions about this motion?
We have one question mark, waiting for the question to come in. How much would it cost an accountant to review the accounts?
Barb, would you like to answer that
Okay,
question?
yeah, it would be, well, we're anticipating it would be $3,000.
Thank you.
Another question. When was the last review done by a public accountant?
We've never had a review. We've never had to incur this cost in the past.
Another question coming. If someone abstains, does it pass?
I'll answer that one. Yes, the abstentions do not count. It's only the votes for and against that count.
Why was there never a review done by an accountant and now we are voting on it?
Okay, I'll answer that one. So the first part of the question, why a review has never been done, because at every AGM in the past, the members have voted that it wasn't necessary. They didn't feel the need, given the nature and content of the report. Why are we voting on it now? Because the legislation requires us to do this on an annual basis. Without the vote, we have to incur the expense. The recommendation of the board is that, given the state of the finances and the care that has gone into maintaining the finances and the financial statements, that it's not necessary. But that said, it's a membership call. And as I indicated, if even one person feels it's necessary, well, then it will be done.
Waiting for one more question. Here's another one. Why can't we just increase the membership fees to cover the public accountant?
Well, I'll answer that one. We certainly could. It's always an option. However, there is sufficient funding available with our current revenues to account for the cost of a public accountant. It's already factored into the budget. And even with that, the budget shows a modest surplus at the end of the year. If that was not possible, then certainly increasing membership fees to cover this cost would have to be considered. But the short answer is we don't have to, and we're able to keep our membership fees as low as we can because of the state of our finances.
I think in addition to that, we would prefer to spend these funds on other initiatives if possible.
Another question. I feel confident that there are retired accountants on the board, but who will be on the board next year?
This is an annual vote, so every year this will be presented.
And shortly, we will be dealing with who will be on the board next year. That's coming up in today's proceedings.
Besides the cost, what are the downsides to hiring an external accountant?
I don't think there would be any downside other than the cost.
This person has asked, I see last year we engaged a professional accounting firm to do our taxes, which provides lots of review and confirmation. Do we intend the same this year?
Yes, we will be doing the same thing this year.
Are inside auditors always reviewing the books?
We have no inside auditors. We have a finance committee and the reports are reviewed by the board. All the information is available to the board to review. We're a small organization. We don't have an inside auditor.
What would be the benefit of having an outside accountant?
I don't think it's going to change anything as far as the financials go. It's a requirement that we vote on this. It's not going to change our finances in any way.
I have one outstanding question mark. Still waiting for that question to come in. Nothing further. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everybody, for your interest in this topic. The motion is to waive the appointment of a public accountant for the year of 2023. Tim, will you launch the poll?
Madam Chair, the poll has now closed. For the motion waiving the appointment of a public accountant, we have 79 approve and 3 oppose.
Thank you, Tim. The result of the vote shows that some of our members would have opposed the motion, which means the motion will fail. Given the potential significant consequence for our budget and the possibility of members having accidentally hit oppose when they meant in favor, I will call for a relaunch of the poll on this matter just to confirm the vote because we do know that it's easy to make a mistake in an electronic vote. Before I do, are there any further questions? Wendy, are there any further questions?
No further questions have been received. Lauren?
Thank you. Then I will ask our Chief Returning Officer to relaunch the poll so that we can register your vote again. Of course, if this next poll includes any opposition, the vote will fail and we will be engaging a public accountant to perform a review of our finances.
Madam Chair, the poll has now closed. For the motion to waive the appointment of a public accountant, there was 75 approvals and 3 votes in opposition.
Thank you, Tim. With that result, we will be hiring a public accountant to review to do a review and engagement. So thank you for your participation.
We'd now like to introduce Lee Pinnock, our past president and the chair of the nominations committee, and ask her to present the report of the nominations committee. Lee.
Thank you. We had 3 members on this year's nominations committee, and our process followed the committee terms of reference, which you see on this slide. And just to tell you a little bit about the board and the vacancies that we needed to fill this year. We have 13 directors on our board. 2 of these will have completed their 2nd terms as of this AGM. And 3 others have each served 1 3-year term, and all of them have put their names forward to serve for a 2nd term. This means that we needed 2 new directors to fill the vacant board seats, and that we have 8 ongoing directors. I'm very pleased to report that Tim Borum, Barbara Smith, and Len Polsky have all agreed to serve for a 2nd 3-year term on the board. You have their statements in your meeting packages, and so I'm not going to read them, but I would like to acknowledge just how hardworking and effective these board members are. Tim, who's from Ottawa, spends much of his time between board meetings being our go-to IT person, as well as a member of the Finance Committee. He has a strong background in IT systems development and training. He started with CCoP in kind of an understudy role to Neville Tenser in learning all of our IT systems. And he has quickly mastered them and has made himself indispensable as the person who keeps our web presence going. And along with Barb, he documents everything that needs to be documented. Barbara Smith from Saskatoon has been our treasurer and a member of our finance committee and our donations committee for the last 3 years. She got up to speed on CCoP's financial picture in an incredibly short time and has done a spectacular job, as you've seen, in keeping our financial house in order and in presenting financial statements and budgets in a clear and easily understood format. She has also chaired our data management task force, and she serves, as I said, on our donations committee. Len Polsky from Calgary has served as CCoP's vice president for the past 2 years, as well as having served on several committees, including donations and strategic planning, as well as some ad hoc committees around bylaws. Despite a busy career as a lawyer, he's always willing to pitch in, including by stepping up to chair our officers' meetings. This is something he manages to do with efficiency and a quirky sense of humor that we've all come to appreciate. These 3 are the kind of board members and CCoP citizens that keep our organization humming along. And I can't tell you how pleased we are that they want to continue in their roles. And they're a really good illustration of what a working board means. I also want to introduce to you the 2 individuals who put their names forward to join the board for the next 3 years. You have their biographical and pilgrim statements in your package, and I won't go over the whole thing, but I want you to know that the quality of these 2 candidates is simply outstanding. David Duncan is no stranger to our board. He served a 3-year term that ended a year ago, and then he took a year away to tend to some pressing work issues, during which, among other things, he walked another Camino, made arrangements to leave his Toronto chapter in good hands, and moved to Hamilton, where he and his partner Colleen have just become co-coordinators of our chapter there. David has a background in strategy, governance, and performance measurement. He has lots of nonprofit board experience, and he has also served as a hospitalero and is going back to Spain as a pilgrim and hospitalero this spring. Robin Inglis is a member of the Vancouver chapter, where he has led weekly chapter hikes throughout the Lower Mainland. He's been walking Caminos for 13 years, including a couple post-pandemic, and he plans to go back this year to begin a multi-year pilgrimage through France and Spain. Robin has a storied career as a historian, archivist, and museum director with a special interest in expeditions and exploration. He has recently agreed to help co-lead the program for our upcoming joint conference with the American Pilgrims on the Camino. Both David and Robin are experienced pilgrims and lifetime members of the CCoP who are passionate about the Camino, and both have been deeply involved in their local chapters. It's going to be a delight to have them on our board. The nominations committee unanimously recommended to the board that the names of all 5 of these nominees be approved for 3-year terms, and the board has approved this recommendation. According to our bylaws, if the number of candidates is equal to or less than the number of vacancies on the board, then the president may declare the candidates to be acclaimed. So you have in front of you the full slate of the board of directors for 2023, including those 5. And as well, I thought you might be interested to see the slate of officers for next year's, or people who are in key roles, including officers for next year's CCoP.
Before we move to questions, I would just like to say a big thank you to Mary Virtue and Neville Tenser, our outgoing board members. Mary has taken the lead with our donation program, Keep the Camino Alive. She's also a chapter coordinator and a long-standing trainer of the Hospitalario program. Neville has been our financial forecasting and investing guru and has served on more committees than I can name. He was the lead on the selection and implementation of our member database system, and along with Jim Rondeau, he led the charge on the CCoP lifetime membership program. Neville and Mary, we're going to miss you a lot. Thank you to both.
Are there any questions from the membership about the nominations committee report? Anyone?
Wendy, are there any questions?
Kudos and thanks from a previous board member to Mary and Neville.
Thank you. Nice.
And another thank you for Mary's leadership.
Following up on what Vi has said in her report, since the number of candidates matches exactly the number of open positions on the board, as president, I declare these candidates have been elected by acclamation. And I am very pleased to welcome all 5 candidates as members of our CCoP board of directors. And now we'll go back to Lee.
Okay, hello again. So I've taken off my nominations committee hat and now I'm putting on my bylaws task force hat. And I'd like to acknowledge Len Polsky, our AGM co-host and vice president and fellow governance geek. And he and I are the task force, and we're bringing forward a few changes to our bylaws for your consideration. The proposed amendments were in table format in the meeting package. And you'll notice that we gave you just the changes and not the whole bylaws. But if any of you want to see the full bylaw, it's on our website under the members tab under documents. According to our Constitution and the Not-for-Profit Corporations Act, any changes to the bylaws require a 2/3 majority of the members to be approved. And I'm not going to go through every little change that we're recommending. A lot of them are just for the sake of consistency of spelling and punctuation and internal reference and definitions. And before I talk to you about the substantive change that we're putting before you, I want to tell you about an amendment to the motion itself. So we're recommending that you approve the proposed amendments to the bylaws in your package, with the exception of the proposed change to section 22A, which we're going to withdraw at this time so that we can give it some further discussion. Section 22A has to do with whether or not our association is concerned with other long distance treks besides the ones leading to Santiago de Compostela. After the proposed changes were posted, we heard from some of our members whose questions made it clear that we need some more discussion and debate about this change, or at the very least to provide some more explanation about why we would like to make it. Rather than hold up the bylaws change and delay for a full year, we're putting the other amendments before you, but not the change that was proposed for section 22A. So for now, the motion that the amendments that we're proposing are going to leave the wording of section 22A as it currently is. In other words, whether the motion is passed or defeated, the bylaws will still say that the role of the chapters is to provide support to individuals who are interested in the pilgrimage routes to Santiago de Compostela and related long distance treks. The only truly substantive change then is in section 36, and it's about how we define and describe officers. There's quite a bit of explanation about this in the cover sheet, so I'm not going to rehash it, except just to say that we believe that in making it possible for the board to appoint officers who are not directors, we'll be more flexible and able to cast our net a bit wider for volunteers who may want to help out with CCoP in various ways, but who don't necessarily want to be on the board of directors. So as the cover sheet points out, there's no particular reason for the clause in our bylaws that says that an officer has to be a director. The Act allows it, but it doesn't require it. We think this is going to make a big difference in how the board goes about its, or is not going to make a big difference in how the board goes about its business, but it will give future boards more flexibility about how they distribute the operational work of the organization among volunteers who may not be directors. We hope this will be a tool to help the board to focus more on oversight and strategy and less on operations. But of course, the big decisions still need to be made by the board under our bylaws. It's the work that we're offloading, not the decisions.
The motion following this report is to approve the bylaw amendments, except for the amendment to section 22A, is moved by Lee Pennock of Saskatoon and seconded by Len Polsky of Calgary. This motion requires 2/3 majority to be approved. Before I call the question, do you have any questions about this motion?
I have one question mark. Would these new officers have any financial responsibilities?
The responsibility is always the board's responsibility. So the board might delegate some work to the officers, but it cannot delegate their authority as board members.
Thank you. There are no further question marks.
Thank you, Wendy. The motion is the amendments to the CCoP bylaw as circulated, and except for the proposed amendments to section 22A, be approved effective immediately. Tim, would you launch the poll, please?
Madam Chair, the poll has now closed. For the motion to approve the bylaw changes as discussed, there are 84 votes in favor and 1 opposition.
Thank you. The motion is carried. I now take this opportunity to thank someone very special there. Ellie Witzke was our president throughout 2022, but recently she decided she needed to step away from this role and take a leave of absence from the board. We look forward to her return to the board later this year. Thank you, Ellie. And that concludes the formal portion of our agenda. Since no other business was identified when we approved the agenda, and so the agenda having been completed, I declare the annual general meeting to be adjourned. But don't go away. We will take a 5-minute bio break and then invite you to come back and get comfortable and enjoy our upcoming presentation. At this time, I will invite all the panelists to turn their microphones and cameras off. We'll be back in about 4 minutes to remind you that we're about to start. Thank you.